Hello, friends and family of Second Presbyterian Church. One of my favorite songs of Advent is O Come, Emmanuel. I'm always moved by the music and the message of that song. I was listening to it this morning, and there was one word that stood out to me today. The word was mourn. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here. Mourn. That word brings to mind and to my heart so many thoughts and emotions and images. In the song, we are reminded of the decades of mourning, the grieving experienced by God's people as they lived away from home in their exile experience. Oh, how they must have missed home. This brings to mind people who have moved into retirement and nursing homes. This season may be a season of mourning as they miss celebrating Advent and Christmas in their old homes. Mourning. When I hear that word, I think of the people I know who are mourning their loss of health as they face illness or surgery, treatments, rehab. And for some people, they are facing their own mortality and death. They know this will be the last Christmas of their lives. There are some who are mourning the mortality and death of the people they loved. Mourning. I think of widows and widowers and children and families who have lost loved ones this year. There will be a sadness to this season, unlike others. Mourning. Some of you may be mourning the fact that there may be family members that won't be home this Christmas due to many circumstances. Oh, you will miss them around the Christmas table. Or you may be mourning thanks to a memory of a Christmas long ago when the children were young, filled with wonder. You remember how they looked with excitement at Christmases under the tree. It was a special, magical time, but now we're all grown up and we sort of mourn as we remember those days. Mourning. Maybe some of you mourn over memories of what life was like during Christmas before COVID. And all the transitions that have been taking place at the church have brought so many changes. Maybe you mourn as you remember how it used to be around here. Mourning. And every day when I read the paper or watch the news, I mourn over the state of the world. Every day people are shot, and some die in gun violence. There is the hatred, anti-Semitism. There are the polarized political fights that go on where faith and friendship seem to take a back seat to politics. It's just enough to make anyone cry. And I can't help but think about the constant conflict in the home where Jesus was born. And there are wars all over the world that never cease. We mourn as we speak of peace on earth and goodwill for all people. We mourn that this vision is yet to be fulfilled among God's children of all races, religions, nations, and people. Mourning. I think that's why I get emotional when we sing, O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here. And it's also why I get emotional when I hear the refrain to that song, Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. And I'm reminded of a promise. I'm reminded that God has heard and always hears the cries of God's people. That when God's people were slaves in Egypt, God heard their cries and provided release from captivity. When God's people were mourning in their exile, a punishment from God for failing to be people who love justice and kindness, and they failed to walk humbly with God, there in exile, many mourned, and people thought that God had maybe given up on them. But God heard their cries. In the time when Jesus was born, God's people were mourning. They were held captive to the powerful Roman Empire, the superpower of the day. And many of the common people were held captive to corrupt religious leadership who had co-opted themselves with those in power to keep themselves in power. God saw all of this happening, and at the right time, God decided the time had come to come down to live among us in person, in the flesh, to be born among us. That's what we celebrate at Advent and Christmas. In Jesus, Emmanuel, God comes to comfort those who mourn, to bring light into the darkness, to bring hope to the hopeless, to offer peace where there is no peace, to offer joy that the world does not know and cannot give. Only God can give these kind of gifts. These are the gifts we're celebrating at Advent. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. And we might add, Emmanuel has come to thee, O Israel. I see signs of that coming all season long as we worship together, as we gather as we did for the hanging of the greens, for food and fellowship and friendship. I see signs of that coming when I hear people offer Christmas and holiday greetings to one another. Strangers are a little bit kinder to each other, it seems. I see signs of that coming as churches and people reach out to those in need. I see signs of that coming as people reach out to those who are mourning the loss of their loved ones or visit with those who are lonely. I see signs of Christ all around us in every expression of peace on earth and goodwill to all people. So I am grateful for this season, for the signs and the songs that remind me that God, as the psalmist says, will turn our mourning into dancing. Ann Weems, the Presbyterian poet, reminds me to celebrate that gift even in the midst of mourning. I love this poem that she writes. Not celebrate? Your burden is too great to bear. Your loneliness is intensified during this Christmas season. Your tears have no end. Not celebrate? You should lead the celebration. You should run through the streets to ring the bells and sing the loudest. You should fling the tinsel on the tree and open your house to your neighbors and call them in to dance. For it is to you, above all others, who know the joy of Advent. It is unto you that a Savior is born this day, one who comes to lift your burden from your shoulders, one who comes to wipe the tears from your eyes. You are not alone, for he is born this day to you. May all who mourn this season, which I suspect is all of us in some way or another, may all who mourn receive the gift of comfort and joy and peace offered to us by our gracious and loving God. May we all be able to rejoice, rejoice, because Emmanuel is here. May you have a blessed Advent season. I look forward to seeing you here at church on Sunday, if not sooner. Peace be with you all.